Hello, everybody. Welcome into episode 3 of Director's Cut. I'm Jackson Kinney alongside my co-director at IUSTV, Drew Frey, back again for the first episode of the week. And Drew, it's been a little bit of a busy weekend, as busy as it can be without sports happening as a whole. A few things here and there, but when it comes to Indiana, the biggest thing, you want to take us through that?
Yeah, the biggest news comes from the IU basketball program. We're still sort of getting steady roster turnover there, but we talked about this, last week, how all the returners most of the returning players would be coming back. Justin Smith, the one question mark, if he goes to the draft. Well, now.
Yeah, that was when we had Jordan on, because we talked about that. The depth of the team would be Rob Finney, Justin Smith coming back, Trace Jacks coming back, but now Justin Smith.
Yeah, so we were worried he might go to the draft, but now he's transferring from the program. Don't know exactly where he's going just yet. Obviously, we'll keep honed in on that. But yeah, he'll be the one starter who's leaving the team, assuming that he does follow through and transfer to a different school.
Using his grad transfer. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. On one of the Twitter posts that I saw about him leaving, there was a couple of Purdue fans in the replies just kind of pointing out, and they'd be like, it'd be hilarious if he came to Purdue. And it's like, yes, but no. I'd rather not.
I've thought about that. And I'm wondering, IU fans have been known to get a little aggressive occasionally in terms of, how players are on the court and interacting with them. And I'm thinking with the amount of hate that Matt Harms got when he came to Bloomington, and with even when Penn State came back to Bloomington, Curtis Jones was getting booed, and he was a player that left IU, went to a different school, ended up just working his way back into the Big Ten. There were really no hard feelings there. And then he was getting booed in his return to Bloomington. So I'm wondering what would happen if you have a player not only leave IU, but then go to Purdue. He would never hear the end of it. And I have nothing personal against Justin Smith. I would honestly feel terrible for him with the amount of hate he would get. That would be such an interesting scenario to see how that plays out, having to face the team you just left twice a year.
And the closest we've seen from that is like Joey Brunk coming from Butler to in-state school Indiana, kind of rivals, but not really. They don't play each other that often.
Yeah, once every other year.
Yeah, that was kind of the closest we'd ever get to it, which is really interesting. But I do just want to point out real quick, you mentioned Matt Harms' name. I just think it's really weird he's at BYU now. I don't want to get into an in-depth discussion on that, but Matt Harms at BYU is still throwing me off. But, Justin Smith, I guess we'll find out where he's going soon.
Yeah, and one thing I'm wondering is, because we're talking about transferring within the conference, we might be able to see that as a third party with Nogel Eastern at Michigan now. He left Purdue, went to Michigan. Those two teams should be playing each other once, if not twice, next season anyways. And they're two of the heavy hitters in the Big Ten. So that it was interesting to see him transfer and then immediately go to an in-conference school. So he'll be someone interesting to follow along with that too.
Right. When Harms announced he was transferring, it took maybe a couple days, maybe a week before him to announce his new destination. So Justin Smith should be finding a place soon. There's got to be programs out there reaching out to him for sure. I guess we'll find out. Yeah. You could always use a guy who could play the four, crazy athleticism. At the very least, he'll give you a cool dunk every game.
Exactly, yeah.
So, there's definitely going to be programs reaching out to him, pretty big programs too. But moving on from Indiana basketball, which is pretty much the lifeblood of everything in Bloomington.
Pretty much.
We're going to turn our attention back to the South real quick, look at another NASCAR race. The Coca Cola 600 was Sunday night, which became the longest race mileage-wise in NASCAR history. With an overtime session, they ran 607 miles.
Wow.
Which, to put it in perspective, 600 miles, where I am in Clearwater, Florida right now, if I'd have driven 600 miles that night, I would have been all the way back in Kentucky. that just for a little bit of perspective. So kind of it's their longest race of the year regardless. It's an endurance race, and it was very interesting from the very start. And one of the biggest stories is Denny Hamlin. They were pulling off to start the race, and each car is built to be as light as possible, right? Well, to meet the minimum weight requirements set by the sanctioning body, teams put these 30-pound blocks of tungsten in the cars called ballasts. And as Denny Hamlin was pulling off the pit road to start the pace laps, his ballasts fell out of the back of the car. So there are these two 35-pound bricks of tungsten, the most dense metal on the elemental table, periodic table,
right,
are just bouncing around the track. And that's a pretty big deal. Obviously, it set Denny Hamlin back in the race, and he never recovered. But after the race finished, it was announced that his crew chief, his lead engineer, and a third crew member, I can't remember which one, but the two main ones were the crew chief and the lead engineer, the biggest hits, are suspended for 4 races after that happening. And it's solely because, imagine that 35-pound brick of metal came out during the race and a car hits it at 190 miles an hour.
right.
It's not very good. It's happened before, and the driver that hit the brick had to be taken to the hospital. So
yeah, I mean, it's dangerous for all the other drivers.
Yeah,
And
NASCAR's not going to play around with that.
Yeah, and not only that, but it sort of gives you an advantage. I know it's the least of their worries when you've got 30-pound blocks of tungsten floating around. But yeah, I mean, your car is now 30, 60 pounds lighter. You might have a little more of an advantage there. And that's sort of like we see in horse racing where, they'll put weights in some of the saddlebags so that the jockeys that aren't, just to sort of balance out all the weight so all the horses have a fair run. It's similar to that.
Right. It's a very tricky process when you have to build a car like that. And then going into that for another driver, the race, I mean, it was just such a weird race. After the race, Jimmy Johnson, in his final year, in his final Coca Cola 600, he finished second behind eventual winner Brad Keselowski. But Jimmy Johnson's car was disqualified for an illegal body alignment. And basically what that means is instead of his car being straight, like imagine my phone being your car and the body's just straight on the chassis, his car was tilted like this too far. And that just gives you an aerodynamic advantage and helps your car go faster. So at the end of the race, NASCAR caught on to that and disqualified. Jimmy Johnson technically finishes last with no points earned. And then, as I mentioned, Brad Keselowski wins the Coca Cola 600. Chase Elliott was about to win when a caution came out with like 2 laps, and then he went to go get fresh tires, and nobody else went to get fresh tires with him. And over the radio, he's just cussing up a storm at his crew. And he's like, how did this happen? This is impossible. This is the worst.
Right. And I know earlier in the race, every car went to go get fresh tires except for him and a couple others. And he immediately sank from like second down to like 15th, 18th because he was running on used tires.
Right. And Chase Elliott just having the worst last 2 weeks, getting spun at Darlington. We talked about that. And then probably the worst strategy call I've seen in all of sports in the past like 10 years or something. It's just insane. But NASCAR and Charlotte, they're in the middle of their 4 races in 4 days. Monday was the Xfinity race. That was won by Kyle Busch. Tuesday will be the truck race. And then Wednesday again is the 4th and final race of the stint in North Carolina, Charlotte, with the second Cup Series race there. That'll be 300 miles or 500 kilometers. If you want to get metric. Yeah. And that it's really funny because they're calling the race, I forget whatever the sponsors, but the 500. Everybody's like, they're running another 500 miles on Wednesday? It's like, no, it's 500 kilometers. Then you have to explain kilometers to a whole section of people. Right. I mean, I had to brush up on it. So, like, it happens.
Yeah.
But, I think that about does it for NASCAR. I mean, after this, I think they go down to Bristol, and which will be a great time. If you've never watched a Bristol race, make sure you check it out on Sunday night. It'll be interesting. It's down in Tennessee. It's one of the most famous tracks in NASCAR history. I think you'll love it if you haven't seen it. So
yeah, and NASCAR is one of these weird sports where you can't. It's seems like it's relatively easier than some of the other major sports to sort of make up these competitions that they had before. Because, I mean, in baseball, they already play every day. In football, you can't play back to back to back to back. You know, you need that week off. And obviously football in the middle of their off season, so it's not as big of an issue. But it's interesting that NASCAR is just able to have 4 races in 4 days, or 10 races in 12 days, or whatever the number.
They're just going and knocking them out to make up the schedule that they lost, which I think.
Exactly. And by the end of this, they'll have most of their points up to where they normally would have before. Meanwhile, baseball's looking at like an 82-game season, if that.
By the end of this, it's going to be extremely weird to wake up on a Monday, a Tuesday, or a Wednesday, and there's not a NASCAR race. I'm going to be so used to the schedule as a fan.
Right.
But, yeah. I think that about does it for any news, unless you have something. There's obviously baseball news, but we're going to talk about that with our guest that we have coming on. He is he's the incoming women's basketball beat reporter, Will Trubshaw. But he's not only that. He's also a huge baseball fan. We're going to talk some baseball news, some baseball movies. You know,
the good
stuff. Yeah. When you're in quarantine, nothing to do, you might as well pop on your favorite baseball movie and just kick back and relax. So we'll have Will Trubshaw on here in a couple of minutes. Stay tuned. All right, everybody, welcome back. Now we have IUSTV Sports women's basketball beat reporter for the fall, Will Trubshaw, on. But as we mentioned, he is not a one-trick pony. Here to talk a little baseball in the meantime while the women's basketball is not happening. Well, everything's not happening, obviously. But baseball, they're working on their return-to-play proposal. And as we are recording just now, the MLB and the MLBPA just ended their first virtual meeting of the week, and big news, one of the things holding up the proposal was the MLB wanted to do revenue sharing. And now the MLB has dropped that revenue sharing idea, making it more appealing to the players' union. But along with this, the new idea is to pay players a percentage of their prorated salaries, although not the full 100%. And that will be determined on a sliding scale where players who make less will earn more of a percentage of their salary, while the more expensive players will get less of their salary. And obviously that's a huge development coming out where in the next couple of days, they have to have something set. This is the week where they have to have progress. And Drew or Will, what do you guys think of the newest developments happening so far?
I mean, for starters, I'll just say I'm glad that revenue sharing is out. I didn't like that idea from the start. The way I see it is that's obviously the owners are going to take a huge pay cut with the way the season's playing out, no fans involved, and the shorter season. And I understand that, and I am sympathetic towards that. But at the same time, I feel like the revenue sharing idea was just trying to lump the players into the business model that the owners had, that they never signed up to be a part of. And I understand things are changing. Everyone has to adapt. But if you're working at like Dairy Queen and they say, hey, we're losing business, we can only employ you half the time, then you get paid half that salary that you would normally be making. If they said, hey, we're losing a lot of business, so we're going to pay you less, then there would be problems because you signed up to get paid a certain amount of money. And now I understand the players got signed up to play a full 162-game season. And not being able to play that will obviously affect their salary. But I think if you're trying to lump them into that revenue sharing, as in I'm losing money for not having fans, the player's job doesn't change. The players are still there to go hit, catch, field, pitch. It doesn't matter who's coming in that door. It might matter for a few people. I'm going to have to pick on the Astros. But overall, I had to do it. But overall, this isn't the player's responsibility. So I think having this prorated salary is the best way to go. I understand the owners are going to try and find some wiggle room there, and if a sliding scale is what it takes, then so be it. I mean, selfishly, I want a season.
Well,
Yeah.
Drew, you say the owners are trying to find wiggle room, and I'll ask you this, Will. John Heyman is the main source of where I'm getting most of this on Twitter, and he's hearing from a bunch of people on the player side that this new proposal from the owners, where the players who are less expensive make more of their salary, and the more expensive players make less, it's an attempt to divide the union. Which basically, if you're not catching on, dividing the union would obviously work out in the owner's favor, and it's putting a lot of pressure on the union to look out for the smaller guys and just kind of look at the bigger, more expensive players and go, I guess you're not that important, almost something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where that's coming from, and it kind of makes sense because, obviously, like the big time players, the superstars like a Mike Trout or a Bryce Harper, even a Mookie Betts, they're going to want to get their pay, because for one, they've earned it, and even a prorated salary, to me, that would be one thing. If I think everyone would be fine with taking pay, like a ratioed pay of their regular salary for whatever the season is, if it gets played. If it's 82 games and you take the equivalent of what your normal contract would be over 82 games as opposed to 162. The sliding scale, though, it is interesting. I could see that causing more problems because, like you said, the big guys, they're gonna feel really shortchanged. I think this still feels more, or falls more in line with the issue of, people are getting slighted. They're not getting their full salaries. Even the little guys who, I don't, as far as I can tell, there's no guarantee that they're going to get 100% of their salary depending on how low they're getting paid. So everyone's still getting slighted, to me. So I think, too, money aside, a lot of these guys will make decisions finance independent because a lot of them have money anyway. Like they've already built it up from years past. The little guys, again, they're the ones who would be least likely to have that. But look at guys who are maybe in the 5th or 6th year of 9-figure deals. They're probably okay. I think what's going to divide people is like concern over the health and safety of themselves and other players and their families more than anything.
Right.
Because the risk, again, is still so huge right now for these guys to go out and to be around. You could have one guy come in contact with someone out on like a run or something, trying to just, burn off some steam in between games. He catches it, all of a sudden it's everywhere on the team in the clubhouse and stuff. So to me, I think, guys, the money is not going to be as much of an issue. Although obviously some people like Blake Snell have made it an issue, but to me, this is not where the players will draw the line. I think they're going to stand ultimately pretty firm on this issue together. Long story short, I don't think this will divide them that much, but I could see why people would say it would.
I'll also say
it's go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned that with when you mentioned the owners and how dividing the union might help them, I'm wondering if it could have that adverse effect. And if it further divides the players and no one's able to come on an agreement, I think the owners have much more to lose here than the players do, because the owners are set to lose billions of dollars. There's already some players who are talking about sitting out. And Will, like you mentioned, safety is going to be the primary discussion point throughout this entire season. We saw what happened in the NBA. Rudy Gobert got it. He spread it to Donovan Mitchell. They were able to trace it back. He probably got it in Boston, maybe. Marcus Smart had it. It spread very quickly. And you've got MLB players like, yes, at the end of the day, Mike Trout is an incredibly healthy human being. And if he gets this virus, he will probably be able to pull through it. Obviously, don't want him to have it. Don't wish that upon anybody. But it probably won't affect him. Someone like Kenley Jansen, the Dodgers closer, has had heart problems for the past 3 seasons. He's missed time due to that. I know Anthony Rizzo has some underlying health conditions as well on the Cubs. Mm-hmm. And another example I remember reading about was even someone like Sean Doolittle. Doolittle's perfectly healthy, but his wife is immunocompromised. So now if Sean Doolittle's now exposed to this, he's no longer able to see his wife for however long this lasts throughout the entire season. So it affects people all around. I think the players have much more room to just sort of let this pass over. And at the end of the day, if they miss a season, obviously that's not ideal. But someone like Derek Dietrich losing $3 million is not nowhere near on the same scale as Artie Moreno losing $2 billion.
And another thing, because this is all happening as we're recording and coming out, Evan Drellich of The Athletic just tweeted out from his and Ken Rosenthal's sources. And Drew, this you brought up maybe they have to miss a season. Well, the MLB Players Association has come out and said they are very disappointed with the MLB's proposal today.
Wow.
So it may be the money will be what keeps it held up. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man.
I'm not surprised at all. I'm sure a lot of the higher paid guys who also have a lot of say in the Players Association probably aren't too happy with it. Because, I don't get why the owners can't just compromise and prorate the salaries if that's what they're going to do. I mean, at this point, it might end up being like a 60-game season. That is not a lot of money that you're going to be losing. To me.
Yeah, and another part of all of this is why they say they're disappointed. They're calling the additional cuts in the proposal massive, and that the league has offered to share more playoff revenue, but on balance, those dollars are going to be small compared to what players will give up. That's what the Players Association believes. So it's not looking good for a return to play by July 4th, in my opinion. It could still be worked out. They still have the rest of this week to really get something going. The MLB PA sent out something to Major League Baseball asking for proof that the owners would have such financial troubles that they're saying they have. And the MLB took a week to respond without full findings or a full report. So the MLB hasn't put out any proof. The Players Association doesn't like the MLB's proposal. Time is running out. I mean, it's going to come down to the MLB asking the MLB PA to trust them on blind faith. And I don't think that's what's happening.
Yeah. I certainly don't think it will. I've honestly been of the mind that I don't think we're going to see baseball this year. It breaks my heart, but to me, there's just no way the two sides are going to come to a compromise. Had this not happened, I think, because the actual collective bargaining agreement was going to be up pretty soon. I think it was actually either this year or like after the 2021 season. To me, I think they were due for a lockout. I don't think there was any way.
The
there's
current
going to be a
CBA
compromise.
runs out. The current bargaining agreement runs out in December of 2021, so that they have to renegotiate it soon anyway. And Drew, I know off camera we were talking about maybe there's a strike. Maybe we lose 2 seasons of baseball. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean,
I would hate to see that, but I would think that someone would end up caving, and I don't know if it's necessarily a situation where one's just going to give up, but with the owners set to lose billions now, just from losing this season in the middle of the pandemic, the shortened season, and all that, I don't think they would be willing to do that 2 years in a row, and also sets up a scary precedent. I mean, right now we're seeing different teams having to lay off employees or furlough employees, and they're still trying to extend these deadlines on how long they can sustain their employees who are being affected by not being able to have seasons. Ticket vendors and the people working in the shops and food and just ballpark management who aren't getting paid. And right now, to go back to Artie Moreno, the Angels have been making more and more cuts. And yes, I mean, Moreno himself is worth a lot of money, but this is about the organization's money. And right now, the organization is seemingly running out of money. Someone like the Twins and the Tigers seem to be doing a better job of managing it. Maybe they have a little more room to spend. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's an organization that's no longer able to function. And especially without games being broadcasted, there is no revenue coming from the broadcasting contracts, which is massive. There's no revenue.
Yeah, the TV deals are normally where they get a lot of money.
Yeah, fans aren't there. There's just media rights. I mean, if you can't really advertise your players when they're not playing, so they are losing a lot right now, and that's affecting so many other people. It's not just about the owners and the players, and I think that's something that we all look over, is that this affects so many more people than just the battle of, owner X who's set to make $3 billion versus player X who's set to make $30 million.
Yeah, and, that kind of goes back to the. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Another discouraging tweet from Joel Sherman on Twitter. MLBPA sees the MLB offer as massive pay cuts on top of already massive pay cuts. The union is discouraged by the offer.
Yeah.
Man.
I'm not that surprised, but I want to go back to, because we were talking about the elimination of the revenue sharing, and I'm not certainly a financial expert, but from what I've read, that hurts more so the larger teams, the bigger market, like the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Cubs and the Dodgers, because they rely heavily on their attendance. I was reading about the Cubs. I want to say it's something like 70% of their revenue comes from in-person attendance at games. So teams like that, strange as it is, would be hurt more so by not having this revenue sharing than smaller teams like the Rays or, I don't know, maybe Kansas City, teams that are, the Mariners, teams that are used to not having large crowds. They have other sources of income that they have to rely on. So not having the revenue sharing, I don't really know how I feel about it, but I think it's going to have adverse effects in a lot of ways. Because I think, it goes back to what we were talking about, how it's not just the owners who get hurt. I mean, you got all the little guys, the people who work at the stadiums, the people who, they're the vendors or the ticket collectors, people who work in the clubhouse attendants. I mean, they're the ones who are getting just as equally affected by this because they have no pay. They're, where's the money coming from right now, right? So it's tricky. I think the best thing would be for baseball to come back, but I don't think it's going to happen. Every time this happens, you see the MLBPA is getting more and more dissatisfied. So I'm really not hopeful on a baseball season this year.
Now, just a little bit of hope, a little bit. Ken Rosenthal's trying to keep everybody from jumping off the cliff too early. He tweeted, keep in mind, this is the first proposal in a long week of negotiations. So maybe we get a 12th-hour Friday deal. I mean, Tuesday and Monday, the first 2 days of this week, obviously, I don't know why I said that, but they're gone. So they have, 3 days to come up with a potential deal?
Yeah.
It's certainly possible, but as Will said, it's not hopeful.
Yeah, and also, to keep that glimmer of hope, there's still a few more days to negotiate this, and all of these reporters that are getting reports of the MLB Players Association is unsatisfied. Tony Gonzalez doesn't like how this is looking. I mean, of course he's going to say that. If he says maybe we're close, then the owners aren't going to give him any more concessions. If he says we're nowhere close, maybe he can get the owners to come a little bit more to the table because, like I said, the owners do not want to just give up a season altogether. So I don't think Tony Gonzalez is in a place where he wants to tell the press that he's satisfied with the owners because that doesn't give him much negotiating power. At the end of the day, this is still business negotiations, and no one's going to get along.
Sure.
Yeah, it's
I'm just thinking optimistically. I have no idea if that was correct. I just want it to be.
No, well, I mean, that is a good point, though. When you think about it, because I think you're spot on. If the Players Association thinks they can get more out of the owners, if they feel that way, or if they feel like this is a good deal, but there's just a smidge more they can squeeze out, you can't back down now. Especially like Jason said, there is still time in the week. So, looking at it from that perspective, that is pretty optimistic and does kind of put a smile on my face. I mean, when you think about it, maybe not all hope is lost. But to me, looking at it from a realistic point, I think there are just so many concerns, again, outside of money for the players specifically, that it would make it hard to justify coming back this season. The way things are now in the world, I mean, in the U.S. here, there are still cases of coronavirus every day. So, the risks, I think it's really going to come down to a risk versus reward decision more than anything.
Yeah, and we're in a time crunch because that July 4th start to the season is coming up, and that doesn't even include spring training. So they're going to have to figure this out really soon if they want to get spring training and then baseball back by the 4th of July, and then a full season or partial season that can at least contribute to the year.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but I think we need to lighten the mood. What do you say? I think we need to talk about baseball movies as a part of a series. Drew and I, a part of the show, we're trying to work in about sports movies, which are the best across each sport. And Will, I know you very well, and I know you've seen a lot of baseball movies, so I figured you'd be a really good person to ask about this. For you, Will, I want you to give me your top three.
Top three. Oh, thank God. I was, because you talked to me earlier, like, give me your your favorite baseball movie. I was like thinking about it while I was having lunch. I'm like, I don't think I can narrow it down to just one. Like,
exactly,
there's so
it's
many...
too difficult. I've been asked before, and for me, it always comes down to a holy trinity of baseball movies. Mm-hmm. So I want to know, what is your top three?
So I might have a hard time getting it down to three. Well, I'll give them to you in no particular order. I've got Moneyball. I got to go with The Sandlot because that's an all-time movie. Sometimes I forget about it, but then it's like, that's your childhood baseball movie.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's so Moneyball, Sandlot, and then I'm gonna slide in with The Natural, but it's a toss-up between The Natural and Field of Dreams.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised you didn't include Field of Dreams.
Realistic, honestly, I'm almost tempted to go more with, you know what, I'm going to switch it. I'm going to go with Field of Dreams, even though I said The Natural at first. Like I said, they're kind of interchangeable for me. Like, you could have given me a top 10. I don't think I would have been able to narrow it down. Because, to me, any baseball movie is a good one, except for, I don't know, like Major League 2 is a little much. But
I'll argue. I think Major League 2 is hilarious. I understand that
it's not the same, but it's not the worst.
It's not the same. If you want to, we can get like Major League 3. That's not even I don't count that as a real movie.
There's a Major League 3.
Yeah, it doesn't include most of the same cast.
I didn't even know it existed, so that's my thing. There you go.
Right. But I really enjoy Major League 2 because I like how we get to see all of the characters who have developed just revert back and start over in their own different problems. Like, they all have to face different issues. Willie Mays Hayes, who at first was just learning the game of baseball but was crazy fast, he develops warning track power but nothing more, and then gets such a big ego built up. Or Pedro Serrano, who is just the ultimate character in baseball movies. I love that man so much. Pedro Serrano's amazing. But to go from the voodoo, very intense player, in the second movie, he turns to a Buddhist type philosophy where he's just so friendly, but therefore it affects his game to the point where he'll swing and miss and then congratulate the pitcher on such a good pitch and then go sit down after he strikes out. And then Charlie Sheen, who tries to adapt into being a decent stand-up guy and then loses all juice on his fastball. I like how it takes the characters who you've already seen developed and then just takes it another step further after that.
Yeah, I think it's okay. That's a good choice. I like that a lot.
That's such a deep assessment of a.
I take movies that have no business being dissected at all. In high school, this is a true story. In high school, I was in a film studies course, and our teacher basically just said, pick any movie you want as long as you can write to it about some sort of analytical topic. And I took that as okay, what's a movie that no one would ever consider writing an analytical review on? And let me tell you, I'm really proud of the essay I wrote about 21 Jump Street.
That reminds me, before I get to my three, one of those in my three is Field of Dreams. And freshman year of college, I took a folklore class, right? And for our final paper, it was a 10-page final paper. And we had to write about a certain topic in folklore and legend. And I wrote about ghosts and spirits. And I wrote about the ghosts and spirits from Field of Dreams.
I love it.
And my whole 10-page paper was basically Field of Dreams is not a baseball movie, it's a ghost movie. Yet Field of Dreams is one of my 3 baseball movies.
It's one of the best baseball movies of all time.
Right. In my hierarchy, because there is such a thing for me, as ridiculous as it is, Field of Dreams is the top of the pyramid. And then the 2 supports are Major League, the original, and Bull Durham.
Okay.
And that's the triangle. That was a circle. The triangle.
A lot of Kevin Costner, huh?
Yeah, Kevin Costner.
Field of Dreams and Bull Durham.
Oh yeah, he's great in each in different ways. For Love of the Game's up there, where he is a old washed up pitcher who throws a perfect game for the Tigers.
Yeah.
John C. Reilly is a catcher. It's kind of weird. Well, I do have a bone to pick with you about 2 of your selections.
Okay.
The Sandlot's good. Moneyball I just watched for the first time a couple of weeks ago.
Really?
And like,
first time?
yeah. Wow. I get
I've seen it like at least 20 times.
I get it's based on real events and stuff, but like in my mind, it's like it doesn't mean a thing without a ring, like the Bulls say. Like, I mean, yeah, it's cool what he did with his team, and it works as a book, but the movie's just so anticlimactic to me.
I mean, I think they sort of touch on that at the end, that it's not like he found like a cure to modern baseball. He didn't, and
like in a movie that just doesn't work for me that well.
But he was able to do something differently.
Yeah, and that's why I said it works in a book.
New system.
It works perfectly in a book, and it would have worked better as a 30 for 30 documentary.
You know, I'll give you that, but I mean, for me, there's something about like how they made the movie sentimental in a way. Like, I mean, Billy Bean or Brad Pitt says it in the movie. Like, how can you not be romantic about baseball? Like, they capture that.
The coolest part was Chris Pratt for me playing
obscure
former Red legend Scott Hattiesburg.
And
then The Natural. It's just not a good movie.
Oh, I disagree so much, but
I can't get it. It was so bad when I had to watch it.
It's a wonderful. It's not very realistic. It's more fantasy than anything. I'll give you that. But it's still, to me, it's a really good movie.
And the movie that just misses out on my top 3 is 42.
Oh,
God, the Jackie Robinson story.
That one was probably an honorable mention of mine.
When it comes to like telling true stories in movies, Moneyball fails because it just feels anticlimactic, in my opinion. Whereas 42 works because the story it's telling is so compelling about integration into baseball and moving forward and how the game has progressed from the days of pre-integration. I mean, it basically moves into the rest of history, and I feel like that's really amazing to see. I mean, the whole Jackie Robinson story, I could be told that every day for the rest of my life and never get bored.
Mm-hmm.
So 42, it's just an excellent movie. It's an excellent movie.
I think 42 is an incredible movie. That's definitely up there on my list. Field of Dreams is another honorable mention, but I'll work my way to the top. One that we haven't talked about yet, which I'm sliding at number 3. Also, I do have to draw attention to all of my Dodgers stuff behind me. I had the whole setup today just for this episode. And that's another. I love 42. I love Jackie Robinson. I love the Dodgers. I love the story it tells. It's incredible. But
Dodger great, Louisville native, Pee Wee Reese.
Yes. Oh, Pee Wee actually went to my high school.
That's okay. That's a flex.
Wow.
Yes, he's one of the few famous alumni that came out of DuPont Manual High School. But what else? Oh yes, another movie that I think moves through history and tells a similar type of story is A League of Their Own, about
that's a really good
women's baseball during World War II, and that's an incredible movie. Another incredible cast, and just great storytelling throughout. My number 2, I am going to go with Major League. I love it. It's pure comedy. I think it's hilarious. But Jackson, I am going to oppose you and agree with Will. My number one movie is Moneyball. I think it's such an incredible story, and I understand they didn't win a ring, but that's real life. That's the thing. It wasn't a feel-good, happy story about some team that rises from the bottom to the top. It is a real-life story about someone who introduced sabermetrics, which is an entirely new movement, into baseball. And not only that, but they did it with Brad Pitt, Jonah Hill, Scott Hatterberg, Philip Seymour Hoffman. These are names that I never expected to be in a baseball movie.
It's a good movie, okay? And it's told very well. The acting is great. You can't beat it. I mean, Brad Pitt as Billy Beane, great. The whole exchange where it's like the middle of the season, and he's just flipping players everywhere because the team's not performing and Art Howe's not putting out the lineup he wants. Right. I mean, that was great where he's on the phone with all the GMs. I couldn't get enough of that. It's just the ending that bothers me. The actual meat of the movie is great. And I get the ending in real life isn't always going to be the Cinderella story. But, like, they could have ended it after the 20-plus game win streak, and I'd have been happier.
Yeah. But they go through that 20-game win streak. Hatterberg has that home run that they build that up to be the climax, and they end up going into the playoffs. And I think that is sort of their happy stories. They took a team that had nothing and was in dead last, and they took it to the playoffs. It doesn't always end up having to be about the ring in the end, because especially in a real-life story, it's near impossible to find something like that. I like that it was such a grounded movie, I think, that really gave you a look into what baseball is and what baseball becomes.
Which is why I think it would have been better as a documentary.
Possibly. I see that. But I don't think that I like all of the pieces that fit into the movie, and also it was a dramatization. So like there are different things. I think the documentary could be good, but I think it would be something completely different than the movie itself.
All right. That's fair. That's fair.
For me, just for what it's worth, what made that movie work was just like the end, the part where essentially there was no peak. It wasn't the happy ending, but it makes you feel for Brad Pitt because like they can accomplish this thing. Like I think the actual A's team won 103 games with like a third of the salary of the Yankees. They won one more game than the Yankees that year, something like that. But Brad Pitt, as Billy Beane makes the point that like they're gonna wash us away from the history books, because we didn't win it all. And to a degree, that's true. But at the same time, look, everyone still talks about it, right? I mean, they're the team that revolutionized the way baseball players are looked at now in the modern age. The whole Moneyball concept is more or less used by every team. So to me, there is sort of a happy ending, if you will, because Billy, he did get the change he wanted, even though he didn't get the ring. It's almost like a tragic hero kind of story in a way.
Yeah.
Like one of those ancient Greek tragedies.
Okay. So now that we've kind of gone through this, I would like to put together a top 3 of all of our entries.
Okay.
So I think we can kind of agree. Drew honorable mention in our top 3 for Will and I is Field of Dreams. That gets in the top 3.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And then I would like to posit that we could put Moneyball in the top 3. I'll give you guys that.
We've got 2 people that I feel comfortable with that.
Drew, say your top 3 again.
Okay, my top 3 was Moneyball, Major League, and A League of Their Own.
Okay, I was gonna posit that Major League be in there as well, because Drew and I both had it. So how do we feel about the top 3 of Moneyball, Field of Dreams, and Major League?
I like that top 3.
It works for me.
So that'll be the top 3 representing baseball when we move into, I guess what we're trying to do here is put together a bracket style competition.
Okay.
The top 3 representing baseball will be Moneyball, Field of Dreams, and Major League.
Yeah.
And then I guess the future categories to consider: basketball, football. I know Hockey's got some that people feel strongly
Got
about.
the Miracle on Ice. That's sort of your main one.
You could throw Miracle or like Mighty Ducks in there. That's for another episode, though.
Yeah.
Slapshot.
We could do miscellaneous sports that include, like, I know gymnastics has a movie. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I think that's about all we got. Anybody, Will, you have anything to say or any parting words for the people at home?
Thanks for having me on, fellas. I enjoyed being on the show here. Hopefully, maybe we can do this again when there is baseball that's been reconvened and we actually have a season or something. But for now, this has been good. Stay safe, guys.
Of course. Yeah. Will, thanks for coming on. Drew, got any parting words for us?
I just wanted to thank Will for gracing us with his DeRosa jersey in the back. I appreciate that up there. And Jackson for bringing the palm trees up to me in Kentucky.
Bringing a little bit of warmth into your homes in these trying times.
Exactly.
But again, thank you, Will, for coming on, taking some time out of your day. Drew, we'll be back Friday with a new show. And thank you all for watching. We will be back soon. Tune in then. See y'all then.